So talk to us a little bit and help us understand what you think the public needs to know about black lung disease.
I think I would say that black lung is a progressive disease, that sometimes it takes years to manifest itself. I'd say every coal miner in America has black lung, but applying for benefits is a kind of whole different type of beast. I think there's a misconception that when you apply for black lung, you have to prove you have black lung. You have to prove you have black lung and you are disabled from black lung, which is a kind of high burden for the miner to prove. And I think until you're a miner applying for benefits, you don't really understand that it's a long process. I think on average a claim can take anywhere from 4 to 7 years. We've had some claims that have lasted 20 years. But on average, getting the final award of benefits takes anywhere from 4 to 7 years. It's also an adversarial process. The Black Lung Benefits Act was founded in 1969, or was passed in 1969 by Congress. After a mine explosion in Farmington, West Virginia, that was kind of the catalyst for it. They kind of snuck in a compensation program for the pulmonary and respiratory diseases that miners had been facing for many years. There's been setbacks in the law and then progressions in the law that have made it better. But it's still a very adversarial process and a long process for a miner.
So what are the first steps of, if I'm a miner, what do I do?
Your first step would be to file an application with the Department of Labor, and they're the government agency that processes claims, federal black lung claims. The application is probably 20 to 30 pages long and requires lots of signatures. You have to know your work history, mostly you need to be, knowledgeable about your work history, which is what sometimes we help miners kind of figure out or help them give us a chronological history of their work history. And then you go through the claims process and you get a free exam. Every miner who applies gets a free exam from the Department of Labor, from a approved list that the Department of Labor provides. And then you just kind of wait to see if that meets the Department of Labor's disability criteria. If it doesn't, we usually recommend our clients withdraw their claim and try again, because it is a progressive disease. It gets worse over time. And then there's about 5 levels of adjudication that a claim can go through, why it takes so long. So we start with the District Director's Office of the Department of Labor. That's the Office of Workers' Compensation Programs. Then it can go to the Office of Administrative Law Judges. Then it goes to the Benefits Review Board, which is an appellate court of the Department of Labor, which reviews the decisions of the Administrative Law Judge. It can go to a Circuit Court of Appeals, which are the highest federal courts behind the Supreme Court. And then very rarely you can go to the Supreme Court of the United States, but we've only had 1 or 2 go to the Supreme Court of the United States. I think one of the biggest deficiencies is just how long the process takes. Obviously the claims are processed through the Department of Labor, and through kind of no fault of the government, just going through that bureaucratic process is a long process. I think miners get discouraged to the fact that a successful claim can take so long. I would also say just the fact that I don't think many miners understand that it's an adversarial process, and it's kind of a battle of the experts. And so a lot of miners, even after your free exam from the Department of Labor, it's very important for a miner to keep up with developing medical evidence, so they're not behind in terms of what the judge is going to review. So keeping up with continuing to develop medical evidence through the process of a claim. I think that's discouraging to miners, that they have to pay out of pocket for additional medical evidence, because medical evidence is expensive.
I think it's kind of a David versus Goliath situation, because you've got coal miners who naturally, you know, they don't have the money to go out and pay for these expert opinions, which are quite expensive. Now, the Department of Labor will put you into what's called interim pay if you are successful at the initial level, which is the district director's office, and we encourage them to take some of that money and set it back in order to get that evidence that they need. But coal companies and insurance companies have the money naturally to pay out for those experts and to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to get independent medical evaluations, depositions, supplemental medical reports. They want to have the last word. And so for us to try to match up from a medical standpoint with our evidence against a deep-pocketed insurance company and coal company, that's difficult. And the doctors they get are not run-of-the-mill, you know, local physicians. These doctors, many of them, this is all they do. They're paid experts, and they have curriculum vitae that are quite substantial, you know, and are very highly respected from very highly respected institutions. So it's not, you know, I call it sort of swimming with sharks. When you get into their territory, they're talking about the medicine, and we're attorneys, and we're trying to depose them on what the medical aspect of a case is. That's a difficult situation. So like Rachel said, it's very adversarial. You have to go up against those doctors. Not a day goes by that we don't do a physician deposition. It's usually 2 or 3 a day. They depose these doctors in every single case. So it's very adversarial.
A successful outcome would be an award of benefits from usually an administrative law judge, or just any level of adjudication where it's not appealed. And so the insurance carrier for the coal company would have to pay the miner lifetime benefits. I think it's around $706 for a miner with no dependent, and then it's an increased amount if they have dependents. And then you also get a medical card for any pulmonary or respiratory care. And not many miners need a lung transplant, but a lot do, and that can cost a miner up to $1 million for a lung transplant. So that medical card is sometimes more beneficial to the miner than the actual monetary amount that they would receive. We do cases nationwide where it's a federal benefits program. We're allowed to represent, we're both licensed in Virginia, but we're allowed to represent miners across the country. And unfortunately, I think most of our cases where our office is centered in Appalachia, most of our clients are Appalachian miners. So from West Virginia, Kentucky, Southwest Virginia, and some of Tennessee. But we have represented miners in New Mexico, Wyoming, Montana, Utah, and actually Colorado. A lot of miners out there is a lack of legal services out of there, and really a lack of pulmonologists out of there who even can perform Department of Labor exams. And the West is so spread out, it's hard for them to travel to pulmonologists. It could be an 8-hour trip for them to get the free exam from the Department of Labor.
So what the trust fund really was created for was when there is no coal company or insurance company that is solvent to pay the miners' benefits, the trust fund steps in to pay those benefits, because the law says that whichever coal company employed the miner for the last year of his career is on the hook to pay the benefits if you win the case. And so that's what the trust fund was created for, and that's what it does. But in our area, we've had a lot of bankruptcies with major coal companies. And so when those coal companies filed bankruptcy, the trust fund was left with the bill on a lot of payouts. And also recently,
And medical care.
And medical care.
I think the majority of our clients are still gonna be retired miners, although we've seen a small increase of younger miners in their 40s. And I think the medical literature shows that younger miners, especially ones who drove through rock dust or operate continuous miners, underground are developing progressive massive fibrosis, but the majority of our clients are still probably retired miners, and you just gotta think it's, you know, maybe ignorance is bliss when you're young and you might be already developing the disease, and it's important for these miners to work and put food on the table for their family.
I'm certainly not an epidemiologist, and I doubt any of the rest of us are, but the dumbed down version of what is very complex science is, as these coal seams are going away, what used to be a direct drill into a coal seam has now become a drill through a lot of rock. And that's what Rachel's saying.
And sandstone.
And sandstone. And so when you get down to the molecular level, there's mixed dust particle when you're going through rock, sandstone, and coal dust. So when you get that combination of those mixed dust particles, that's what's really destroying the lung tissue. Whereas in the past, when you were drilling straight into the coal seam, you were only getting that one kind of dust, but now you're getting multiple. So it's almost multiplying the effects. And that's where the literature is showing that there is this rapidly progressive pneumoconiosis, especially in younger miners. And that's been reported quite a bit. It was reported at our recent conference, and it's been reported probably for maybe half a decade now.
And I think that's probably one of the goals of the current administration under MSHA, is that they want to get a silica standard passed. But I think, you know, getting a coal dust standard was hard to pass, so getting a silica standard is gonna be hard to pass as well.
I know you guys aren't medical professionals specifically, but are you seeing other lifestyle factors that maybe go into black lung that maybe you don't think about? I mean, you're thinking about these mines clearly, but you know, smoking, anything else that you think is specific to some of these people or areas?
I think that's a great question, and it's one that means a lot to me because we have had, I don't know the exact number, but not only a few, I'll say it that way, of people who have unfortunately committed suicide in our firm, or
Clients.
you know, clients.
Yeah.
And I think when you think about that, you got to look at the kind of person that a coal miner is. You know, a coal miner is a proud, hardworking, family-oriented, support my family, pull myself up by my bootstraps type of person, right? And so they're used to doing that kind of work for many, many years. And like I said, I go back to my own grandfather. I grew up watching that in him. And when you've lived that life and then you get reduced down to what black lung does to you, where you're no longer able to provide, you're no longer able to support, you're no longer able to play with your grandkids, and you're struggling, it takes a huge toll on mental health. A lot of miners need mental health treatment, and it's difficult because it's a generation of people who are not used to even recognizing the importance of mental health. They came from a generation where, like I said, you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you don't need help, you don't complain, but they do, they need that help. And so I think it's natural for those people to turn to, you know, to cigarettes or anything else that's gonna try to help them compensate and cope with that. And it's always bothered me to know that our clients have, you know, and we try to talk to them. That's part of our job. You know, we're attorneys, but we're also counselors. And when you're talking to people, you have to know, you know, you just kind of get a sense of what they're going through. You have to listen, and you have to offer an encouraging word. It's more than just being a lawyer sometimes. And it's always bothered me to know that some of our clients have ultimately done that. It's not a great number, but it's enough to make you worry about it. Rachel, I just
I was
wanted
gonna
to say
say, there's a pulmonologist, his name is Drew Harris. He's a pulmonologist from UVA in Charlottesville, but he comes down to Lee County to Stone Mountain Services, and for I think the past couple years he's been doing kind of a study on mental health of miners who suffer from black lung, and his name is Dr. Harris, and he travels to St. Charles in Lee Lee County and works at Stone Mountain Health Services, and he's been conducting a study on mental health services. That's why, MSHA passed, and I'm not sure what year the dust level was lowered, but that's why they kind of lowered the standard for the dust level. And I guess there's always the options of wearing protective equipment, a face mask. But we've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of coal miners, and lots of coal miners will tell you they just can't breathe underground with the face mask on. And I don't think the face masks are entirely that effective. Coal dust particles are so small, it comes through the face mask, and so you still see severe cases of black lung even with personal protective equipment.
There's a lot that we could say about the dust standards too, because the truth is, when these are studied, it's not the typical coal mining shift. And what I mean by that is, you hear these older miners tell stories of, hey, the inspector's coming today, we've got to make sure we run things perfectly, and all of a sudden the shift changes dramatically. You hear stories of people being told to put the dust monitoring device into their dinner bucket, or to put it out away from the working face of the mine where it's not as dusty. So it's definitely something that's happened. The dust, the maximum particles per area, I forget the exact terminology, but it's actually decreased. You're supposed to have, the mine is supposed to be less dusty, but you can't make a coal mine not dusty. And so that's the problem. There's been all these attempts over the years to reduce that, but
My dad has done this, he's done federal black lung benefits for 48 years. But then when I started to practice, I think I started to appreciate the role of miners in our country better. You just don't realize, when you finally interview a miner, you realize how hard they work. They work more than 8-hour days. They usually work 6 to 7 days a week. So that type of hard exertional labor, 6 to 7 days a week, probably 10-hour, 12-hour shifts, you just realize how much they have really, given to their jobs to provide for their families. It's really amazing to hear how hard our miners have worked and continue to work.
yeah, no, I echo that 100%. There's really not a profession that I can think of that is more consistent than your average coal miner. They are the most consistent humans you'll ever meet. They don't feel like going to work, they go anyway. They're struggling, they get the job done anyway. There's a real camaraderie among the miners. They really care for one another, and they, for the most part, enjoyed the work they were doing. It was never easy work, it was brute work, but there was a camaraderie where they didn't want to let their brother, and there's female miners too.
That's what I was gonna ask, what is the percentage? We always think miners it's a male-dominated occupation, but what is the percentage, and are you seeing a growing number in female?
I'm not seeing, we do have female clients, but I don't know if it's still predominantly a male profession, and I'd say we have a handful of female miners who have applied, or clients who have applied for benefits. But there's probably a lot more out there who just haven't applied for benefits.
My aunt worked as a coal miner for a couple of years, so I do know one personally, but like Rachel said, it's definitely less than 1% of our total.
So it's still a male-dominated
It's
occupation.
definitely is.
But just speaking about coal mining too, I think it causes all these respiratory diseases. But it's also probably one of the most inherently dangerous professions there is, just in terms of rock falls, gas explosions.
Yeah.
And they're, working in those elements 6 to 7 days a week.
And it's very rare, to be honest, if you interview a miner that's been underground for 30 years, it's very rare to see them completely 100% physically. You'll have missing fingers, you'll have a lot of back surgeries, a lot of knee, it's just orthopedic issues right and left. It's, and of course a lot of fatalities. We all know people who've passed away in the coal mines, And, like she said, it's an incredibly dangerous job. But they do take that very seriously amongst themselves. They wanna look out for their brothers in the mines, and so, I say that too, that you can always tell they sort of swell up with pride. They'll say things like, I was part of a rescue team, or we were part of the safety team and we tried to help each other out, take care of one another and have each other's backs. But I have the utmost respect for coal miners. I mean, it's just, it's incredibly difficult, brute manual labor work.